onde? Esse aqui, tá. Começou? Tá gravando? Bom, boa tarde a todos, boa tarde aqui no Brasil. É com muita alegria que estamos iniciando essa live, trazendo três grandes empreendedores de diversas localidades do globo. Um do continente europeu, um da América do Norte e um do continente africano, para dar uma contribuição que a gente entende de muito valor, entregando a sua visão sobre o que está acontecendo nesse momento, nesse momento no cenário político, no cenário econômico, que nós estamos passando de uma série de incertezas no Covid. Algumas regiões estão um pouco mais antecipadas do que a nossa aqui no Brasil. Então a gente entende que empresários locais, com suas opiniões, vão trazer um ponto de muito interesse. Eu gostaria de começar, a live vai ser em inglês, tá? O chat está aberto para as perguntas. Tá? E eu gostaria de começar falando um pouco aqui, fazendo um pouco do cenário da América do Sul e depois apresentando os nossos convidados. Tá? Well, first, I'm going to make an introduction about South America and what we are living through here, what we're going through here. And one minute. We have in South America about 420 million people, and Brazil is half of the population in South America. It's 210 million people. When in the North Hemisphere was winter time, we were summertime, so we are a little bit delayed on the COVID-19, and this we had impact later than what happened in Asia, then Europe, then North America, and we've been through this impact right now, and right now is winter time in Brazil. What we see here around is and locally what in Brazil is that we have the federal government is more light with the lockdowns. He's more open with the markets, driven with open markets, and the governors and the mayors are making a white lockdown, and and this worries us a lot because Brazil is a continental country, and if we compare, we have 210 million people, and this is and if we see the numbers that of contagious, and if we compare, and here I have the balance sheet of 95 days since the first case of Brazil. We had 28,000 deaths in the first 95 days since the first case, and if we join with some France, the populations of France, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Portugal, and Switzerland, they have 205 million people, and the deaths in the 95 days from the first case summed 88,000 deaths. So I guess because of perhaps the weather, perhaps the some other reason, but we had a little bit. We had much less impact on COVID, and we are having a much energetic energetic action from the governments. So we would like here, and this is the reason and the purpose of this meeting, is to see what you've been through in your regions, in your continents, in your countries, in COVID, during this pandemic, forecasting over the economic and politics situations. I'm going to present my dear friend Antonio Carlos Rodrigues. Who is based in Portugal, is going to talk about Europe. He's 45 years old, has always been linked to Casais Engenharia e Construção, a company with more than 70 years. He started there as a technical director of construction, later assuming the technical commercial director administrator, delegate with supervision of technical commercial information systems, quality and marketing departments. In 2007, he assumed the position of director and a year later, chairman of the executive board. The Casais Group is present in 16 countries in Europe, Africa, North America, South America, and in the Middle East, working in areas of engineering and construction, infrastructure, and sustainability. They are one of the biggest builders in Portugal, having been chosen for the second consecutive year as the best builders with the prize of Construir Awards. He holds a master's degrees in civil engineering from the University of Minho, where he also attended the MBA Construction Specialization course. In 2017, he finished the Owner-President Management program at Harvard Business School. Currently, he is also a member of the Strategic Council of the Institute for Science and Innovation for Biosustainability, Business Ambassador of the City of Braga, member of the Consultative Council of the Civil Engineering course at the University of Minho, Ambassador of the Alumni Community of the University of Minho, member of the Board of Directors of CVR, Centro Valorização de Resíduos, spin-off the University of Minho, District Delegate of the Order of Engineers of the Northern Region, and member of the Board of AICCOPN, Association of Industrial Construction and Public Works. Antonio, it's a pleasure to have you here. And how are things in Europe, and how did the governments reacted? The economy is running, and how do you forecast what the next months over there?
Thank you, Eduardo. It's a pleasure to be here and share between friends and businessmen all around the world. Well, about Europe, you have to take into account that Europe is a sum of very different realities. And we have northern and southern of Europe with very different ways of reacting to COVID. You can see Sweden that has taken a very different approach from everyone else. We have Italy and Spain that were largely hit in the beginning. I think that they actually were a reflex of some structural problem. They were not so quick to react, but they were also the first. And when we look at the impact of COVID and how governments have reacted, I think it has been going through several stages. In the first stage, it was a very quick try to react, and everyone was very frightened. So the lockdowns were actually happening very quickly, and everyone was very worried about a disease that no one knew, and still we don't know very much. But when I look and just making a fast forward to today, that we are in a completely different world, because it seems that people are, I would say not fed up, but they are just, they don't want to endure these lockdowns and stay at home. So it was a shift between what was happening 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and what's happening now. It seems like nothing actually was happening because people are now going to the shopping malls and going to restaurants, which quite surprising. But I think that that's also a reflex of well, at least I will start by Portugal, where the government I think did a good job. They were very quick to shut down the schools and close the economy. They kept some key areas ongoing. Construction was one of them. But it's actually good because people stayed at home. They thought about it was going to be just for 2 weeks, then it turned to 1 month, and then 1 month and a half. And this was actually good for just leveling down the anxiety level. So when I see it today, people don't have the same anxiety that they had because I understand a little bit more about the impact of the disease. So we actually had our campaign hospitals all set, and they've been dismantled. So there's no more hospitals, campaign hospitals doing anything, because actually the response of the health sector was very good. So, but looking a little bit back on the crisis itself, I think the largest impact is still yet to come, because we are actually looking at changes in behavior. We are looking at some things that are happening with technology, because everyone is now doing meetings on Zoom, so not traveling, still not traveling. The lockdown on flights is still there. So I think the major impact will be felt on the coming months, on the coming year, because we are seeing already some sectors, I would say the auto industry, which is an important sector in Europe, because in France they're very strong, in Germany they're very strong, and Spain, even Portugal. So there are players that are providing parts and pieces to these large manufacturers, and people are just not buying. So they're expecting for the electrical and autonomous cars. So it's all adding up. So it's the worry about the economy. So people, I think one of the things that at least for now, it's been subsidizing people to be on hold as unemployed. So what they have been doing is subsidizing companies to keep the workers there. So I think that has maintained for now the level of employment. We call it the layoffs. So companies have to support to 1/3 of the wage of the employee, and government is supporting 2/3. So that's been good in the last 2 months, but that will not be enough when demand is not there. So I think the largest impact will be on these shifts on demand, and some sectors that will not recover as soon as we would want. Tourism is one of them. So most of the southern countries depend a lot on tourism, and the only tourism that we are seeing is the internal tourism from within the country, because not even traveling between, and there's a lot of discussion nowadays between people that want to come from England to Portugal, but they're not allowed because you have to do a quarantine. So that has a huge impact on the tourism sector, because I would say that 60% of the revenue is done in 3 months. And those 2 or 3 months, it's July, August, and September. So they will not be able to have those tourism that would be traveling here. So just to give you a perspective, we would have normally 14 flights a day to the Algarve every day. Now it's down to 1. So you can imagine the impact on that. So I think that's the problem for Europe, and I would say for all of the countries will be the impacts coming in 2021. Europe, well, it has been in the last 1 month surprised me positively, because 1 month and a half, no one was getting an agreement on how to put these recovery funds together. So they managed to put actually a very important package. And this package will actually put in the economy a large piece of finance. Part is finance, part is grants. So you don't have to take back that money that you're going to receive. And most of it will be to try to recover some key areas like the aviation. So they need the support, but also the investment on infrastructure. So investment on the railways, on important infrastructure that were being delayed. And in our sector, I would say that with all the bad things that are happening, we are actually seeing a very good perspective, because a lot of the investment will be done on this construction and renovation, and so all the public buildings, I think, will be through a major investment in the next 7 years. So that's part of the package that they've been announcing. This will be good to jumpstart the economy, but I think that we need, and in Europe, to discuss what's Europe. So what's the role of every country? Because everyone has its own agenda. Everyone wants to look at how they can recover for itself. But we're a region, so China was the first one to get impacted. If you look at the United States, they're in a politics, rising tariffs, saying we want to bring industry back home. Europe is doing the same. So there's a lot of reconfiguration coming our way, and it's still soon to know which sectors will be more impacted. But this reconfiguration, needs to be discussed, because every country has its own strengths, and we need to leverage and learn what strength do we need for a stronger Europe. And that discussion is not happening still. So I can see the agenda, but every country is looking by itself, not looking in a more integrated way, because that, I think, will be the next challenge, because we'll have these three blocks, Americas, Europe, and Asia. And I cannot see still a strategy for Europe that's very clear. And how are we going to tackle the lack of skilled workers, which has been a very big problem in the past few years? And that, I think, it will be a huge problem if there's a public investment like they're announcing. So there are a lot of structural problems that I don't see still a way. I can see that there is a way, but I don't see yet the discussions happening. How are we going to retrain the people? How is automation going to impact employment? How are we going to train these people into new skills? So a lot of challenges, and I'm sure that these challenges are all the same all around the world. So still a lot of the pages still yet to come, and not very clear.
Okay. All the scenario is not very clear, and well, the expectation is that the state is going to provide a role of spending some money to impulse the economy growth. Is that something that's possibly is going to happen?
Yes, I think that's the way that governments are trying to jumpstart. So we're using the public contracting to put the money into place and to actually do something with it. So instead of just subsidizing wages, which you are subsidizing to do nothing. You can just put the money to work and actually build something. Or I think one of the biggest challenges is actually we're going into a more connected digital world. If you look at our infrastructures, our houses, they were not prepared for you to come home and work from home because you were supposed to be at the office. So if you just look at that trend, and the home remote work is just a new ball game. I can now hire someone from India because I was not sure if remote work would apply to some areas, and now I don't have any doubt. I can just work with someone else from whatever. When I look at work today, it's very different from what I imagined it 6 months ago. For me, it's there's no office that's closed with apartments. No, people have been working 3 months now in very different places, and everything is happening, and there's no reduction of productivity. Actually, I can see some increase in productivity in some of the areas. Innovation, I see more people looking at how they can disrupt their own businesses, because you sometimes have to disrupt yourself before you're disrupted. And I think we'll see a lot of disruption coming our way in many businesses.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. Let me introduce my friend Mohamed Azab. Mohamed is an Egyptian friend. Mohamed is active in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, where he sits on a number of investment committees and boards. He's a serial entrepreneur and an angel investor in both Egypt and the US. He is an Endeavor entrepreneur and a board member at Endeavor Egypt. He started his career as a banker at ABN AMRO and Citigroup, where he has worked in private and investment banking in the Middle East and Europe. Azab obtained both his BA and MBA in investment management from Washington State University and owner-president management program at the Harvard Business School. He's a Harvard alumni and a visiting guest speaker for Siha Capital HBS case. Siha is building an integrated healthcare platform in Egypt with the vision of transforming healthcare services in the country. It has invested in diagnostics, specialty centers, and hospitals, currently focusing on building a hospital platform for the mid-income segment across the main medical hubs in Egypt. ARV is a startup global fund investing in Endeavor company with focus on Series A and S sector agnostic. Mohamed, good evening. Nice to have you here. And how are you seeing this scenario and forecasting the changes that are coming? How is Africa doing?
Boa tarde, Eduardo. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure being with you, Antonio and Enrique. Very good friends, and happy to be here. So I can tell you a little bit specific on Egypt and Africa. As I'm sure everybody knows, it's 54 countries. It's a very fragmented continent. Antonio was talking about Europe as a region or as a zone. Africa is very fragmented. You have about 1.2, 1.3 billion people. GDP is about 2.5 trillion, with the three largest economies representing about 40% of the African GDP being Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa. So it's very fragmented, and it's very hard to describe what's happening in general in Africa, but there's always some indications. You have North Africa being a little bit advanced than Sub-Saharan Africa, with excluding of South Africa, of course. And you have some of the Francophone African countries. You have on the eastern side, you have mostly the English-speaking countries. So it's very fragmented. But I can tell you that the general sentiment, at least, being a very frontier markets and emerging markets on some of them, the idea of COVID, how can I say, it was not very much taken seriously by most of the governments, just because of the poverty and because of the opportunities also on the business side. There's always a dilemma between if you have a full lockdown and how people will be able to survive. And at the end, this is why the vast majority of countries in Africa and Egypt as well have chosen the path of a partial lockdown. So it's not a full lockdown to be able to not shut down the economy, because the population would not be able to continue like that, and because of poverty and so forth. I'm sure you can relate to some of the other emerging markets, maybe in South America and Southeast Asia. But in general, the direction was partial lockdown for a few weeks, and then you have to open up and you have to cope with it. This approach has actually proved to be a good approach. Egypt actually is one of the very few countries that would see positive GDP growth somewhere from 1% to 2%. So this is actually a very big deal. Even again, the reason is it's a very resilient country. Since 2008 of the financial crisis, we've seen two revolutions in 2011, 2014, now COVID, and we keep on going. So it's a very resilient economy, very diversified, and a big gray market as well. So it's been going. But you have sectors that have been hit very bad. Unfortunately, tourism is the front line. Just last year, we scored, the highest revenues coming from tourism since the revolution in 2011. Sadly, it got hit due to COVID, but it's expecting maybe next year, hopefully, it will pick up again. So tourism sector has been badly affected. There's a lot of pressure on the EGP, pound versus the dollars, just because of, we're affected badly by the Suez Canal because the global trade has slowed down. It's affecting our revenues coming from the Suez Canal. It's affecting the remittance coming from the migrant workers, because a lot of them are coming back, especially the Gulf. Egypt is very connected to the Middle East in general, so a lot of the migrant workers are coming back. That's as far as Egypt is concerned. I know Nigeria has taken also a similar path of a partial lockdown. Other countries in general, the general sentiment is cope with it and open up the economy, and the shutdowns was partial and short-lived. In terms of the opportunity or the bright side, the ecosystem for the entrepreneurship space in Egypt specifically, and other ecosystems across the continent, now they're becoming more interrelated and more connected. Access to funding is happening from African investors to, not only country-specific, even though it's a fragmented continent, but we've seen capital flowing, crossing borders from Egypt to Kenya to Nigeria and back and forth, slowly, but it's happening. So the bright side, the innovation, a lot of companies are coming up based on, again, disrupting existing old businesses. A lot of the digitalization is happening on almost all the sectors, even in healthcare. So a lot of very positives happened. A lot of the younger generation, a lot of startups are moving into that space. A lot of digitalization. Of course, like any other country in the world, all the consumer habits, not only consumer, all our work habits will change. New business models have been affected, even real estate. The idea of all these commercial real estate will change to more of a co-working space. On healthcare, you can see a lot of the telehealth happening, a lot of home visits moving to home care. So again, the bright side being we're very not very structured as economies. So the innovation and the moving into new business models is actually happening much faster than more of a structured companies or more mature companies in that space. So that's as far as the economy post-COVID. Politically, Africa is not a very stable place, especially the Middle East. I can talk about Egypt again. We have to the south, we have issues between Sudan and South Sudan. Now we have a big issue with Ethiopia over the water and the Nile, the famous Ethiopian dam that is affecting Egypt and Sudan. And, there's talk of, right now in the General Assembly in the United Nations, they're trying to deal with it. You have to the west, you have Libya and how all this whole oil and gas and natural gas. Other countries that are meddling in the region, Turkey, Greece, Egypt, France. So politically, it's not very much stable. You have Syria, you have Iraq to the east, and you have Palestine/Israel. So actually, Egypt is like the only stable somehow island of stability in the northeastern Africa. That's a very positive thing, and it's been proven as resilient across so many crises and so many unrests in the region. So we've seen some inflows and from investors as well. So that's positive as far as Egypt is concerned. I think this is how we're seeing the new developments happening. But the good thing that again, most countries are open for business, and most people believe that COVID is going to be around for 12 to 18 months. And it's not only COVID, we're going to be seeing a number of these pandemic happening in the future as well. So government has been good in terms of giving short loans and postponing credit and payments and installments. But again, our governments can only do so much because of our situation. But overall, the good thing is the entrepreneurship space and the opportunities in Africa in general. And I'll leave it for now, I guess.
Okay. Let me just, as you have a lot of experience in the financial markets, how do you see the financial markets, the S&P index, and the behavior of the global financial markets, the global indexes that are returning to, or almost returning to a point that was previous as they were just before this crisis, this pandemic crisis. What they are perceiving, what they are, how they are behaving like this. Why is that?
I think from my point of view and from the region where I'm in, I think it's just a sentiment. It doesn't make any sense to be going back to the same levels because a lot of the countries are in recession and a lot of slowing down in the economies. I think it's mostly sentiment, and it's mostly the effects of COVID would most likely we'll be seeing in 2021 and 2022 even. So I think we'll see another dip of the markets that would follow actually what's happening in the economy or what's reflected in the economy. There's so much liquidity in the markets. I don't follow much. I follow high level the US and Europe, but in the region here, it's just a lot of very good opportunities on the stock exchange. But the effects of the economy will be reflected in the market, I think, mostly in 2021.
Okay. We see around here also, and you pointed you had a very good point. We see a lot of very good impulse on the electronic transactions that were happening in a slow way, but right now, as people were unable to go out and do what they had to do, so the market found a way to do these transactions, and so the electronic transactions, all the digitalization of the physical processes, they are a new business, and they will improve the productivity of what we have, and so we will have a scenario of substituting people for this no need for people to receive the documents and do this transaction, because everything is moving too fast. Okay, so thank you, Mohamed, and let's move to Enrique Ramirez Magana. I'm gonna make an introduction. Buenas tardes, Enrique. Enrique Ramirez Magaña was born in 1968 in Morelia, Mexico. He studied business at ITESM with graduation at Owner-President Management Program, OPM 2017 at Harvard Business School. Ramirez foundations refer to video store and movie theater chain, having created in his early life 2 video store companies, one of them the first and biggest delivery system for home videos in the world. In 1997, he became CFO and CIO of Cinépolis, the 4th largest movie theater chain in the world and largest in Latin America, with 2,200 movie theaters and presence in 8 countries, including Brazil. He created in that year a VIP concept for Cinépolis. He's president of Morelia's Food Bank, where food is given to the poorest 8,500 families in Morelia every week, along with courses that help them maintain self-sufficiency. And in 2002, he built a city inside a city called Três, consisting of 4,000 acres of land for 15,000 homes. 4,000 families are already living in Três Marias, where there are currently 4 schools, 1 university, 4 hospitals, 1 museum, a Jack Nicklaus signature golf course, the biggest clubhouse in the world, and more than 7,000 employees working in 22 companies' headquarters. Since 2013, he's president of Top Deck Yachts, winning the Cannes Award for the most innovative yacht in the world. Since 2015, he's president of Notion, a revolutionary educational system for K-9, where kids and teachers learn and teach using iPads in a closed environment designed by more than 300 educational specialists. Notion is also a great system for homeschooling and is now implemented in more than 100 private schools in 36 cities of Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Enrique, thank you very much for being with us. And how are things in North America?
Hello, Eduardo. How are you, Mohamed, Antonio? Nice to see you guys. It's great to be here with you. I just have a couple of ideas. And the first idea is that we are still in the first wave of the COVID-19. And the wave is growing and growing and growing. And we don't know how tall this wave is going to be, but it's a fact that we're in the first wave and it's still growing. So that's the first idea that I want to just leave there. The second idea is that in the US, there has been 25% of the cases in the world and 25% of the deaths. So far, it doesn't matter the capacity of the health system based in the statistics. In the US, they have 25% of the cases and 25% of the deaths, and they have the best hospitals. So that's the second idea that I want to leave there. The third idea is that a country like Sweden that didn't slow their economy at all, and they just kept open, they are number 7 in number of deaths by every 1 million people. They are the 7th country with more deaths. The US is the 9th. Spain, Italy, and are in the first 6 or in the first 5. The first one is San Marino. San Marino, that has only 35,000 people. It's the number 1 with more death for every 1 million people. The second one is Belgium, that is very near Sweden, and they're in the 2nd place. So it doesn't matter the capacity or if you slow down the economy or not for the number of deaths in your country. It matters for the capacity of the hospitals, just not to have everybody sick at the same time, because then it happens what happened in Italy, in Spain, and in Ecuador, in Guayaquil, that you see people dying in their homes, and it's a big problem. But so far, to slow the economy hasn't give us any advantage on the number of deaths in any country. Egypt has done very well. They are number 72 in number of deaths. They have only 34 deaths for every 100,000 people, compared to the US that has 400. So Egypt 34, US 400, Spain and Italy 600, or more than 600. Yesterday, less than 20% of the deaths were in the US. Only Brazil had more deaths than the US. Brazil had 25% of the people that died yesterday were Brazilians. Mexico has the biggest proportion of deaths against positivity cases because we don't have tests. The government didn't allow the laboratories to put tests into the market. So we have very little testing. As we speak, I'm in Ixtapas, Iguatanejo, a very nice small town with more than 600,000 people. And they have 600,000 people, and there is nowhere you can do a test, a PCR test for COVID-19. With 60,000 people, there is nowhere you can take a test. Yesterday, they had 12 people die here in this small town. And I'm very concerned because COVID is arriving into all the small towns in Mexico and in Latin America, and we're not prepared for that. So people is going to start dying in their own homes and with no testing at all. But finally, I hope that the deaths are pretty much the same number of deaths that are having in the world in the same percentage. Now, this affects the economy a lot because in Mexico we had already 120 days with everybody in their house and supposedly very little commerce, and people is very tired to be in their houses. And now that the wave is growing, everybody is coming out, and most of the people, they don't even care. They don't use masks. They don't use anything. They're just out there. And the government is not being able to stop the people to go to their homes. In the US and in Mexico, the mayors of each city are the ones that say who can go out and who cannot go out, and what commerce or what business can open or not open. So reopening is going to be very hard. In our business, in movie theaters in Mexico, we have 32 states and we're open only in 6 of them. In the US, we're open only in 2 states, and in the world, we're only open in Spain. All Spain is open. Mexico, 20%, and the US less than 20%. And some of the places where we reopen, they are asking us to close again. So sometimes we reopen a movie theater for 3 days. So you have to hire people and reopen, and then you have to close again in 3 days. In Mexico, they don't help us with anything. The government doesn't help at all any company with money or with employees or nothing. In the US, it's pretty good. All the employees of Cinepolis, we could get rid of them, and the government was paying them. So that's a pretty good help. Unemployment in the US has dropped from 14%, or the worst was almost 15%, to 11% this month. So it's coming down. That's very good for everybody. Not in Mexico, but in the US it's coming down, even that their wave is still growing. In Mexico, the government decided to give the money direct to the people because we have elections next year. So they prefer to give the money direct to the people so they know who they have to vote for. And that's very sad that it happened that way. And we think the economy is going to down the gross domestic product in the US by 8% and in Mexico by 10%. So Mexico, it's going to be hit worse than everybody else probably in the world, because we were already doing very bad, because the new government, it's very bad government. They are very socialist, and they want everybody to be poor. That's their concern, is nobody should be rich. No, so that's a very communist way of thinking, and that's what we have right now here in Mexico. So finally, if we put all these ideas together, I think it was good to close and to send everybody home for the first month or month and a half, but not for 3 months. The economy is going to be hit very, very bad, and it's going to be very difficult to get over this hit. And so far, if everybody's out in the city, still, I think the same number of people is going to die. So far, 25% in the US has died of the total of deaths, and they have the same number of cases. So what my biggest concern is that only 15% of the people in the worst country has been infected, 15%. So we still have 85% to go. In Spain, in Italy, in UK, in France, only 15% of the people got infected. That's not enough for this, how do you say that, the
herd immunity, Enrique, right?
So I think we're going to have a second wave and a third wave, and the vaccine is not near, and I hope the people starts going out and going to the theaters and go to have dinner and do their life, because anyway the same amount of people is going to die. That's very sad, but I don't see any progress in the next 3 or 6 months. I hope I'm not right, but I think this, as we see it, is going to stay here for the next 6 months at least.
Okay, what we see here in Brazil is, and contributing with Enrique, is we started the lockdown too early, and some cities, the main cities, started in the mid of March, and as you know, we have the carnival in February, so we had a lot of foreign people that came to Brazil, so the virus entered in our country by the end of February, and by mid of March we had the first lockdown, and our winter time, the winter season began a few weeks ago, and so we have all the disease that comes from the winter season, and we are expecting to have the schools the lockdown until at least August, September, and so it's too long to have the economy like this. And there are some cities that we had a lockdown, then the mayors and the governors they lose the economy. Okay, now you can work, and then we brought the people to the companies again, and 2 weeks later they locked down again. So this is much worse than you have a lockdown for the entire period, because you have all the planning, you buy the goods to the company, to you prepare everything, and then you have to close everything again. And this is what we're going through a little bit, and here we had a surprise in Brazil, because the government gave some money, 600 BRL, to the people who was unemployed and the people who needed, who was not working, and they expected 33 million people to have this benefit. But we had informal people that was not in this amount, that were 38 million people. So the amount was much more than they expected, and this is an important income for the families to survive, because the economy is closed, and we are not allowed to. We, as I say, we is the entrepreneur, is the businessman. Most of the activities are not allowed to open, and this is what worries us most here, and the excess of authority from the governments, and this and I agree at some points with Enrique, and our worries are on this. We have some questions, and I would like to ask for you. We are in the end of our live. We have 8 more minutes. We have a question from Flavio. Is that the question is, a lot of establishment business have been increasing the rate of innovation both internally and on their services / products due to the new normal caused by coronavirus. What are some of the positive wins that you are seeing on your industry / regions that will make a lasting impact? Looking for the half full glass. Please,
Okay,
Antonio.
I can. Okay. Well, I think that with COVID, actually, we got a boost on getting adoption. We were already 1 year ago putting everything on the cloud and using these platforms. And actually, in the last months, we had a jump start, because you had no chance. If you want to keep on working, you had to move into these platforms. So what I've been seeing is that in our sector and our company, but I'm talking about the sector, is people are now talking a lot more. When I'm looking at the association, the construction association, and even the government, we have never talked so much about what needs to be changed and improved. So we've been working with governments how to improve communication about health within our own facilities in construction and even on the offices. So one of the things that I saw very positive was actually, well, we ended up getting more social distancing, but on the other hand, we compensated with much more connection. So people are now doing stuff that they were not doing before. We actually just did 2 weeks ago our first patent. We never patent anything. So, but we saw that we need to change some things. We need to put people talking about what we needed to innovate, and we did in 4 weeks what would probably take us a full year. We've done so many things in just a couple of weeks. We are now launching our first e-commerce platform for our material businesses. It was also done in 2 weeks. So all these projects that needed a lot of talk and obstacle just to get it jump started, now there's no obstacles, because people are really aware that we need to move fast and we need to change. We need to be more resilient. We need to be anti-fragile. So I think that's a new word that I never heard about it, but being anti-fragile is actually very important looking forward, because it's not about what's happening now, it's what will be happening in 2021 and 2022. So bringing these anti-fragility things are I think very, very important.
Okay. Thank you, Antonio. Mohamed and Enrique, do you have something some contribution?
I think okay, Enrique, go ahead, please. Okay. No, so I think I share with Antonio, and our main business is healthcare, right? So we're fighting COVID as a normal company that has to deal with the slowdown, but also we're fighting on the front line, and that's been very challenging. But the bright side to Flavio's question is, right now we're looking at the option of how can we accelerate our consolidation. So we're actually in the process. Possibly we might be going public on the stock exchange in Egypt, just to raise more money and consolidate more hospitals and have a faster growth, just because sorry, got disconnected there. Just to consolidate faster and build and accelerate our growth story, because a lot of people now want to invest in healthcare, so it's a good opportunity on that. On the community side, we've shifted one of our hospitals to a pure corona cases, and we've worked with other pharmaceutical companies for clinical trials to be able to help out. So I see a big opportunity in that space to do good and have impact on our communities, and at the same time, as many of the entrepreneurs see this disturbance or winding down is a very big opportunity to reflect and rebuild your business model in a way that is actually, to Antonio's point, that is not fragile or make you, being adaptive very quickly. So I only see opportunities both on the impact side and on the business side. So Corona is actually, of course, there's very bad implications on people and so forth as a health issue, but it's a good time to slow down, wind down, and put priorities in life and in business as well.
For us in the entertainment company in Cinépolis, well, there is nothing to be glad of. There is nothing we can do. We have Cinépolis Click, that it's a platform like iTunes, but the business is still nothing, no? In the shopping centers, well, it's pretty much as entertainment. They don't work if the people doesn't go, so this doesn't help at all. And we don't see any way of improvement or getting advantage of the situation. In Notion, in my company for education, well, I prefer the kids to go to the schools, but if they have to learn from their homes, we have the best technology. So we're growing a lot, we're growing very fast, and we're going to the US next month with homeschooling, and I think we're the best system worldwide for homeschooling. I really believe there is nobody as good as we are for homeschooling. So that's going to be a very, very big company and a very big project. And I think we're going to be very glad we have everything in place. In Notion, I have 400 people working, and they can work from their houses. There's not a big problem. Their corporate offices is closed, and they do a lot of improvement, and they can work from there. And in the land developing, so far the people has value more their homes. So if they have a home of 200 square meters, now they want a house of 400 square meters, and the guys that had a 400 square meters want 800 square meters. So we're selling a lot of homes and doing a lot of upgrades for the people to buy a better home with an office in their home, or with an entertainment center bigger for their kids, and a study hall to do their homework and to do their classes. So For real estate, it's good. It's not that bad. We're still not getting the hit of the economy, of the downside of the economy, but we will soon. For the education, it's good. For entertainment and shopping centers, it's very, very bad. And we have car dealerships also, and that's very bad. We're not selling anything at all. And the people doesn't know how to make any sales or get anything good out of this in the entertainment, shopping centers, or automotive. They don't work. And hotels also. We have hotels. They are closed. Our hotels are open and they are full because we are giving away rooms and food for all the healthcare guys of the city. So if you're a doctor or a nurse and you don't want to go back to your house because you don't want to infect your family, you can stay in our hotel, and we give you food and everything there. So, but that's the only way. That's the only thing that it's open for that. But I don't see anything good out of this so far.
Okay, thank you. AJ has one question for Brazil. Actually, which are the key sectors that have not been affected by COVID-19 in Brazil? So there are not many, but we have agriculture here in Brazil that has not been, the commodities in general, the agricultural commodities has not been affected. We have the real estate, the construction real estate, but residential ones that because of the low interest rates, we're having a flow of money here in Brazil. We have the lowest historical interest rates in Brazil. It's 2.25% interest rates a year in Brazil. So this created a flow of money that's coming out from the fixed income to the production, to the stocks, to buy real estate and to the production. So, but the commercial real estates are being a lot affected, but the residential no. We see here this crisis. We see the companies that have cash, they are going to survive, and so the informal, the small, and some of the mediums, they are going to be very affected, and they're going to be devastated from the business in a lot of industries, in a lot of sectors. So saying that, once the normal is returning, people are returning to consumption, and so the big companies and the companies that had cash and they went through this crisis, they've been through this storm, they would have the market for one period of time to surf this wave almost by themselves. That's what we believe. So the big retails companies, they are in an advanced position here in Brazil. The small retails are going to suffer a lot, and so there are some industries that are the health care system here. The niche are going very well, and all the digital transaction companies that are related to digital transaction, these are the ones that are booming. So this happens a lot here in Brazil. They gain a lot of space because of what we said before, because of the state of because of people that couldn't go to do their transaction physically. So the digital transactions accelerated a lot, and we see this as a continuing movement. So that's more or less this, my friend AJ. Guys, we are through. We've been through our time. I would like to thank a lot these 3 exceptional guys. I learn a lot when I'm with them. Thank you very much. I know it's very late in Egypt and in Portugal. And I thank you very much that you had this moment with us. Lo agradezco a Enrique también por estar con nosotros and share your knowledge, your experience, your feelings with us, your feelings of the business, what is going to come, what is going to happen. And this was a great value content that for me at least, and I'm sure for everybody. And thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Eduardo.
Muito
Thank you very
obrigado,
much.
tudo bom. Muita saúde.
Eduardo, gracias por organizar esto. Muy bien, muy divertido.
And it's a pleasure to
Antonio.
see you.
See you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Cavalheiros, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.
Obrigado a todos por assistirem. Um abraço.